Hello my friends of WildRift and welcome to another RiftGuides WildRift video, and for today we are going to take a look at Vex and we are going to tell you what you have to do on Vex to win more games. But before we do that, let's go to our question of the day. What is your opinion on Vex so far? Let me know in the comments below. Obviously, before we go into the details, we have to tackle the abilities first so we're all on the same level of knowledge. So let's start with Vex's passive ability. It's called Doom and Gloom. Vex periodically becomes empowered, causing a next basic ability to fear enemies and interrupt dashes. Whenever a nearby enemy dashes, Vex applies a stack of a mark that can be consumed for bonus damage and also reduces the cooldown of her empowered state. So for example, let's pretend that you're playing against an Ahri. Ahri is infamous for her mobility and her dashes. When Ahri uses her ultimate ability, Vex can proc her passive every single time Ahri dashes, which then allows her to deal a lot of bonus damage. With this bonus damage, the Ahri will have trouble dealing with Vex, and Vex will have more fears in her arsenal to deal with Ahri and all the other teammates around the Ahri. Vex's first ability is called Mistral Bolt. It launches a damaging missile that accelerates mid-flight. This ability is typically used for wave clear and just poking the enemy from long range distance. It's very easy to hit and people get caught off guard because of the difference in tempo, or rather the acceleration of the projectile itself. Vex's second ability is called Personal Space. Personal Space means you get a shield and damage nearby enemies upon casting this ability. This ability is also quite nice to create space during a teamfight, as the empowered version of it fears everyone around you. With everyone around you feared, you give your team more abilities to actually do in the fight because you're controlling the pace of the fight. Every second of crowd control matters, and with this you have a crowd control area you can actually impact without anything you have to do but pressing a single button. Vex's third ability is called Looming Darkness. It summons a damaging and slowing zone that applies doom to enemies. When you have it empowered, it also fears people from the center of the ability. This is something you have to keep in mind when you're trying to chase an enemy that's trying to run away, and you want to place the ability in a way that the enemy is feared towards you, which then makes the game significantly easier because the enemy closes the distance between you and them on their own, but well, they're not really voluntarily doing so. Vex's ultimate ability is called Shadow Surge. It fires a missile that marks an enemy champion. If you recast it, you will dash to them and deal extra damage again. Also, this ability resets upon getting an assist or a kill on that target and allows you to go for even more. So you can basically imagine Vex as a Katarina-esque champion that goes for resets. Obviously, you don't want to go in instantaneously after hitting it and resetting it because you need to wait for other cooldowns, because going in immediately after getting a reset without any of your abilities available is more or less a death sentence to yourself. Now let's quickly talk about runes. For runes we want Electrocute, Sudden Impact as the new rune for next patch, and if we don't run Sudden Impact we'll go for Weakness. The next rune is Adaptive Carapace and then Hunter Genius. Electrocute suits our burst pattern in the best way. We just want to use all our basic abilities with an auto attack and then just back off again. Then on its cooldown's reset we just do the same again. For our second rune, Sudden Impact, which will be a new rune, which will be Armor Pen or Magic Pen, or Weakness, which is just bonus damage after crowd controlling an enemy champion. Since our champion has decent amount of crowd control, and reliable crowd control that is, Weakness will be almost always applied at any time, which means free percentage damage for you and your allies. Adaptive Carapace is just a default choice which grants you HP and some resistances once you get low. For the next rune we have Hunter Genius, which is one of the most consistent runes you can go for in a sense of cooldown reduction. However, if you're feeling a bit troublesome in terms of mana, just go for Mana Flow Band. Now let's go for items, but here we have a little problem when we talk about items. Before this patch hits, we'll go for Luden's Echo, Prophet's Pendant, Void Crystal, Void Staff, Rabadon's Death Cap, Oblivion Orb, Morellonomicon, Lucidity Boots, and Stasis. Now you might be a little bit concerned because I named a lot of different items. The goal for this build is to maximize damage with little gold investment. So rather than typically going for Rabadon's Death Cap, we go for pen items, because pen items are severely stronger than you believe they are. A pro player Snitch did some math on Reddit, and you're more than welcome to check out his post and learn about it in detail. You can find the link to it in the description below. For the next patch, however, we are going to change the itemization a slight bit. We're going for Luden's Echo, Awakened Soul Stealer, Void Staff, Rabadon's Death Cap, Infinity of Lucidity Boots with a Stasis enchant. With the rune and the item stuff out of the way, it's now time to talk about what makes Vex a typical champion that you want to have on your team. Vex is amazing against melee champions. Whenever somebody gets close to her, she can just reliably fear them away, crowd control them by doing so, and then have her team run them down. She also features a high amount of burst damage that comes super fast. When she hits somebody with all her abilities, they're just gone, similar to a Katarina, similar to a Diana, similar to all those kind of champions that just send you into the Shadow Realm. But what does Vex do that other mages can't really do? Vex, compared to other mages, has the abilities such as Kai'Sa to go into the backline of the enemy team if she hits her ultimate ability, Shadow Surge. With this ability, she can go into the backline of the enemy team, use all her abilities and go into the Stasis enchant. Then, since the enemy is feared and in disarray and probably lost a big chunk of their HP, the teammates of Vex are now allowed to move up and clean up afterwards. It's also something you have to understand. A champion with a long-range engage is able to go for consistent picks upon hitting the spell. With this on your mind, every positional mistake might just be your death sentence, and when that happens, the game is most likely over, and with Vex having such tools in her kit, it gets really troublesome to deal with this kind of champion. Also worthy of note is that the amount of crowd control she brings on the table is quite insane. Every dash used around her gives her a small percentage reset of her passive ability if she procs the passive ability. It's so much bonus damage as well that you'll just notice that your HP bar is evaporating whenever you use a dash ability. So yeah, Lucian and other kinds of those champions, good luck going close to this champion, she's gonna demolish you. But now comes the everlasting question, is Vex hard to play or easy to play? Vex skill floor is unbelievably low, as every mage is typically like that. You can just spam your abilities and have impact. But most of the mages have a very high skill ceiling because there's so much you can do and so much zone you can control with your positioning. Just knowing how a fight can develop and where the fight is going to go, and expecting what the enemy is going to do next is the difference between a bad, a decent, a good and a great Vex, or typically a mage player. For those champions, it's all about positioning, and for Vex it's also mostly about positioning and how you sequence your cooldowns. Let's talk about this because this is severely underrated, the concept of cooldowns on mage characters. Whenever a mage is using a cooldown, he puts himself in a vulnerable position. He opens up a window of time where the enemy can actively punish him if they know about the cooldown. With the cooldown, the mage can't just do anything anymore, because obviously the spell is on cooldown, they can't just use it, and mages are not infamous for her auto-attack damage, are they? With that in mind, any champion with a gap closer, any champion with any kind of normal attack ability or any kind of cooldown available can use this window and punish the champion, which means that if the mage player makes a positional mistake, he might get immediately punished. It goes all the same for all characters, but mages are usually the most vulnerable because they're the squishiest and the most defensive champions when it comes to specifically that. To give you a better idea, let's just talk about the laning itself. When your passive is available during the laning phase, the enemy has to respect your passive because you'll just fear them away, ground your passive on them, and just deal them more damage. If your passive isn't available, they're not as likely to be afraid because you have less damage, less sustain, and less of everything that you need to keep yourself safe and putting the enemy into the dirt. Also, when you use a spell during the laning phase, let's say you start with your first ability, which is the most natural thing, you can poke the enemy, but if you miss this ability, the enemy can just move up to you and you don't really have anything apart from your auto attacks to fight back. Now on level 2, when you skill your second ability, your personal space, and have your passive ability ready, any melee champion is just not allowed to walk close to you, because if they do, you can just cancel their attack with your second ability, get a massive shield, and fear them away, including minions. With this in mind, since all your abilities are AoE abilities, you'll have no trouble clearing the wave and maybe even getting an advantage from it. On level 3, you're then going to skill your third ability, and then you can combo things such as using your empowered second or first ability to fear the enemy away, your first ability right into the face, and then your third ability as they're trying to walk away to apply another stack of your passive, which you can then suck away to deal even more damage. For maxing, you want to max your first ability first, your second ability second, and your third ability last. Obviously, as you can skill your ultimate, you always want to put a point into your ultimate ability, so there we go. But if there's something that I need to tell you if you want to play Vex, Don't be afraid. You need to have the confidence in your own ability to go deep into the enemy lines and take out some people. Oh yeah, and this champion is probably gonna make you go insane because you have to work properly with your map, because you need to go and work with your camera and map to aim your ultimate ability properly, and if you can't do this, you're losing so much value on that champion. And that's it for today's video. If you liked the video, leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more of this content. Just come back for more because we'll always have more. See you soon for patch 3.5.